Hey friend, I have a quick message for you before today's episode. Let me ask you, are you having a hard time getting your team motivated? Do they feel disengaged? And of course, as you know, you are not alone. There's many people like you facing the same problems every day. What if I told you that you can motivate your team without even trying? Well, Karin, the guest on this episode, will host an online workshop for you that tackles engagement without focusing on motivation. You can see the details at bit.ly/Karin with a K, that's KARIN_SMTP. And the link is also on the show notes. Now, I can already hear you say, what do you mean without focusing on motivation? That's a great question. One of the main reasons Agile fails or doesn't achieve the outcomes we want is because we're trying to install Agile like if it were an app on top of an outdated operating system. It's like trying to install a 3D game on top of Windows 95. The operating system on which we are trying to install Agile is the underlying management and leadership paradigm that the associated mindset that we are really blind to, that even I and maybe you are blind to. In this workshop, Karin explores a different leadership mindset and gives us the tools and exercises that will help us adopt this new operating system of sorts and overcome the need to motivate, which is really an old leadership paradigm focus, by replacing that need with a new approach, self-organization as it was meant to be. For more on that, visit bit.ly/Karin_SMTP. The link is also on the show notes. So if your vision is to develop a team or organization with highly motivated, self-driven, and responsible team members, we look forward to seeing you in this workshop and introducing a way of seeing leadership that will help you develop successful teams. You can get the details at bit.ly/Karin_SMTP. That was the announcement. Now on to the episode. Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Team Tuesday this week with Ben Maynard. Hi, Ben. Welcome back.
Hi. Thanks for having me again.
So, Ben, on Team Tuesday, we talk about teams, but we always start by asking something that is very personal, but also very important in the journey as a Scrum Master, which is finding that source of inspiration and knowledge. And we ask for a book as a source, of course. So what was the book that most inspired you in your role and your career as a Scrum Master?
I think, without a doubt, and I'd like to pretend that it's a close-run thing, but there is the book which had the most impact on me was Practices for Scaling Agile and Lean Software Development by Bas Vodde and Larman.
Very good. I know Bas. I know a little bit of his background. I was in Helsinki at the time that he was preparing to write the book. He ultimately wrote the book somewhere in Asia, if I remember correctly. But there's a lot of stuff in that book. In fact, I think they have 3 books in that series, Bas and Craig. And there's so much stuff there, though. So what were the things that really inspired you, that really perhaps even changed your approach to your role as a Scrum Master?
I mean, it's no stretch to say that book really has defined my entire career. I think, without wanting to sound too ridiculous about it, it was that book which led me to become a large-scale Scrum trainer. And it was particularly the structure of the book, the experiment-based structure of the book, being able to, I found the book when I was early on in my Scrum Agile journey, and I was able to read the book in the morning on the train, on the way into work, look at the experiments and the ones that really resonated with me. The problems that they were trying to solve were problems that I was facing day in, day out. So being able to take those experiments, go back into the office, talk to the team about some of the ideas behind them, and then begin to try and repeat some of those experiments with varying degrees of success and failure, was just a wonderful opportunity. I think there's one of the major items from that book was this concept of single backlog, single sprint. It was just groundbreaking for us. We had really struggled to get things working well. We'd done offsetting sprints, we'd done sprints of different lengths because we had a handful of teams all working together, and all of them just felt like we were kind of not doing things right. We never hit a decent cadence. We felt like we were lacking transparency. There was talk of bringing in like project management to try and bring it all together. And what we found was that actually, if we took a different view of it, if we tried to say, well, now let's have a single backlog, let's eradicate the dependencies that we have. Let's not play around and just try and manage the dependencies in some way. Let's eradicate them. So we took a fresh look. We looked at our backlogs. We looked at the dependencies. We decided that actually, once again, the right thing to do was to just throw some of it away and recreate the backlog items as whole features, because it's something that we had, as we'd kind of got a bit bigger, it's something that we'd drifted away from. So then, that idea of then saying, well, let's have a single backlog, which led to then re-engineering some of the work, which led to more holistic features, which enabled us to all work on the same sprint, which enabled us to get to the end of the sprint and have an actual increment of done work, was huge for us. And it gave us it solved loads of problems, and it gave us a whole heap of much higher order problems to solve, which helped us no end. And it wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't one for that book. And actually, I think a talk by a gentleman called Colin Bird that he gave in, I think, the ITV offices as part of an Agile Coaching Exchange meetup a long time ago, where he just mentioned about this whole single backlog thing. With everything came together, and as a result of that, I ended up with a less case study, and it shaped me as a professional and also as a person to a large extent.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that respect, actually, the large-scale Scrum framework by Bas Vodde and Craig Larman is quite different from other frameworks. And we do have Bas on record here on the podcast. I'll put the link on the show notes, where he goes and explores some of those concepts. So it's really, really cool stuff. But now we turn our attention to teams, Ben, and how sometimes they create their own problems. So tell us the story of a team, a little bit about their context, and then walk us through how that specific pattern or behavior in the team emerged that ultimately led to trouble.
God, it's interesting to see which one to pick. But if I think of one from quite some time ago, but it was definitely a pattern which I've observed since. I think there's always a risk that is run when somebody senior who doesn't really understand the work or the people chooses the structure of a team from a person perspective. And so we were in a situation where we had a lot of software which was of variable quality. I think that it was without wanting to go too technical, there was a lot of PL SQL in there, which kind of hinders the ability to easily kind of do a lot of the things that you would normally want to do. We had a senior person who had decided exactly who should be involved in this particular team, and they had picked a number of strong characters and a number of people who were really engaged and really wanted to give all this new way of working in a new team a go, because this was we were looking to kind of increase the usage of Scrum throughout the organization. We'd had some success up until that point. So this was like the next kind of step on that journey. But what we found was that these people had been picked, but there was just a couple of characters, and one character in particular who didn't really seemingly want to work with the team, and we couldn't figure out why. As much as the team tried to work together to understand the work that's been presented to them, this person wasn't massively engaged in wanting to figure that out. They were coming across at times as reasonably autocratic through the decision-making process. And what compounded things was that because of the expertise that some of the individuals had, when there was a fire burning somewhere on the platform, and there was often fires burning here and there, these were the people that were seen as the people that had to come and fix it, which meant that any opportunity they had to work together collectively on a particular sprint goal was 9 times out of 10 completely diminished by the fact that people were being pulled off to go work in other areas. And then the resultant fear and anxiety that came into play then stopped people from making decisions anything other than the short term, and stopped people from wanting to collaborate and show some vulnerability and increase psychological safety. And it gradually became a much more kind of command and control style structure within that team, and that was very, I think, destructive for their ability to really own the work and grow together.
So you described specifically one pattern I would like to explore a little bit more, which is this idea that whenever there's a fire burning, as you called it, some people are picked out of the team and put into other tasks to, stop the fire, obviously, for a good reason. But that affects the team's ability to grow as a team. What were some of the aspects that you saw that were directly consequences of this, taking some team members out of the team every now and then?
What I've often found is that when you have people that are seen as the people that have to go and fight the fire because of their deep level of understanding and expertise, what it's usually endemic of is a lack of understanding or previous learning from other members. So teams are often then quite dependent upon that person, that expert, to do the work. So when they are taken off and they are told to go and work on something like to go and put out this fire, what it means is the rest of the team are left without anybody to learn from. They are left there just kind of trying to feel their way in the dark to understand how can they actually progress, because the skills that they need, they haven't had the opportunity to grow, and they're not going to have the opportunity to grow those skills and gain that knowledge and understanding because the person that is able to teach them is either taken off to work on something in isolation or is acting in a kind of autocratic manner, kind of ordering people around. And all of this is, when there's a fire burning, everyone's immediate thoughts are on survival. The only thing they're willing to learn, the only thing they're willing to focus on is whatever gets them out of that painful situation. It's a fantastic trait as human beings that we've got this ability to kind of get ourselves out of pain quickly, and that leads to many kind of short-term decisions. Unfortunately, organisationally speaking, when dealing with software, when you're only ever thinking short-term, you don't get the opportunity to focus on the more medium to short-term things like learning and increasing capability, and perhaps looking deeper at the fires and ensuring that they don't keep popping up. So the balance of I think for me the major impact of that is just a lack of learning. And a lack of trust, which ends up...
which then reinforces the pattern of having to take the experts out of the team every time there's a fire.
Yeah, it's a as we were saying, systems thinking, it's a fix that fails. Because you only ever...
self-reinforcing loop, for sure.
Absolutely. But I don't think that people feel that they've got the time to think about such things, or even aware of them. And then I think what happens is then, like in these types of situations, you get the person I lost count of a number of times working in large organisations where the supposed fix to a large number of defects and fires is to have a better structured defect management team and more clearly defined areas of responsibility. No one ever talks about actually focusing on writing better quality code. Which is and talking to the users more to ensure actually solving their problem, because
that is the focus on the short term also prevents us from learning in practice, right? Because the short term hides a lot of original causes, multiple perhaps, not just one, but original causes that lead to where we are at that point. And Of course, we as humans tend to associate our actions with solutions, right? When we do something, it's going to solve the problem. Like when we add a more complicated bug or issue tracking process, then it's going to solve the problem. When we add one more testing phase, it's going to solve the problem. When we add one more team, it's going to solve the problem. And of course, that's not always the case.
No, and I think it's from a managerial perspective. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure if this quote did come from Jerry Weinberg and Fred Brooks, but they said that the more software projects go awry because management make decisions based upon an incorrect understanding of the system than from all other causes combined.
Yeah, that very much links to what Deming said already quite early on in the 20th century, which is that many problems of management have to do with exactly what you said, the lack of understanding of how work actually happens in practice.
No, precisely. And I think this is where techniques like GoSee, particularly in that team I was talking about, the encouragement and near prescription that we were giving some of the more senior people in the organisation to actually go and spend some time with this team to see really what's happening. I think would have gone a long way if they'd chosen to do that to help resolve it, but sadly it wasn't the case. And I think that it's something that Gordon Isaac said to me many, many years ago was there's a balance to strike between earning and learning. And I think that the problems of earning is that it's always very kind of short-term focused, and it's so you're trying to get that return on investment, you're trying to get that software out and trying to understand if it's valuable. But if you're not balancing that with learning in all of its facets, then you will ultimately end up slowing down. And I think that the one thing that I've seen teams and managers and leaders alike fail to really kind of get their heads around early on these agile journeys is understanding what a true capacity is, because your capacity as a product development group is broadly split between your capacity to learn, like cost and assess work and refine it, your capacity to create it, and then your capacity to support it. And I think that you have to be able to find a way of balancing those three things. And of course, you want to minimize your capacity, the time you're spending on fixing and supporting, and maximize your time on learning and creation.
And unfortunately, we do need to stop, but that was a great way to stop it, Ben. Thank you very much for sharing that story and all of those insights.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Tuesday is Team Day here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. But tomorrow we talk about something that goes beyond the work we do with the teams. We will talk about how to lead change and what our guests have learned from leading and participating in change programs during their career. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.